Hey guys, welcome to the BOGO channel. Today I'm going to walk you through how to install a rear view camera and also a USB port where our current cigarette lighter is on the 2015 Jeep Wrangler. To do all this, it's going to be some very basic hand tools. So it's going to be a screwdriver, a socket screwdriver, and then a wrench and a couple extensions, different sizes. That's all going to be 7mm. I'm going to also be using an electric screwdriver just because I have the benefit of doing so, but this is going to all be done by hand. I'm going to use a panel tool, some zip ties to make sure everything looks nice and tidy, a couple different connectors, including some heat shrink. I think that's very important. And then we're also going to use a couple of basic wire cutting, crimping tools with a test light as well to find the correct wire. And that's really all we need to install the rear view camera and the USB port on the Jeep Wrangler. So let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, it's going to be very simple. We're going to first remove this panel right under the feet area of the Jeep. It's kick panel. There's no tools necessary for this, just a hard little tug on there. We'll pull it right down and then you can get it out of the way. There's going to be two 7mm nuts or bolts right here next to the steering wheel. I'll show you, there's one right there. If you come to the other side, there's another one right there. So we're gonna have to remove those two first. I'm going to need now the panel removal tool so that we can go ahead and remove this panel right here. And be very gentle, as you don't want to scratch it. This doesn't need a lot of pressure to come up. Just kind of pop it out just like that. Now you don't have a lot of space here to work with, but there is a red tab on the right hand side of this panel. We're gonna go ahead and pull that out. And I've pulled mine out already. I'm gonna press right here and that should release it to be able to pull straight out. So next we're gonna have to remove a 7mm socket that's right in here, right underneath that plug that we just took out. And last but definitely not least, there's gonna be another 7mm bolt. There's going to be one right here. Now, underneath this tray. Now, I don't have that bolt just because I've done previous modifications, and so I haven't been able to find quite that one yet, but you're not really doing it right if you're not losing anything, correct? So once all that is done, it's gonna be a simple pull of the dash to get that dash out. And this whole piece is gonna come out as one. So with that out, I'm going to go ahead and remove these 4 7mm bolts that are in here as well. This will allow me to get access to the back of the radio, where I can then tie in our reverse camera too. All right, so once those bolts are removed, we're gonna go ahead and pull out the Jeep radio. So this is the kit that we bought, and I'll make sure to include the links to everything I've purchased, so that if you guys wanna imitate this as well, you can. So this is the harness that came with my backup camera. And so it's the yellow auxiliary out with a power cable, which we're going to wire into our camera reverse cable here. So this is going to feed video to the camera, and this is going to give it power. So I've gone ahead and installed some heat shrink onto my butt connector before I put it on there. It just makes it a little bit easier later than having to run everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on our reverse wire from our radio. We'll grab our crimping tool. So we'll go ahead and use it right here. Don't need to press excessively hard on it, just enough to get it to bite down. I'm going to go ahead and check. We're good to go there. We'll go ahead and grab our wire from our reverse. We'll feed that one in there as well. I'm gonna go ahead and flip it around. Give it a little tug, we're good to go there. We'll grab the auxiliary out and we'll go ahead and plug it into our wire for our radio. And that's how we do that. Perfect, so I'm gonna go ahead and shrink the heat wrap. Now as you see, I didn't add any of these the original time when I first installed this radio. Again, it's not necessary. This is just kind of overcome. I'm just trying to show you guys the best way to do it if you do want to do it as correct as possible. Perfect, so now that we have a watertight seal with these two cables, as I mentioned previously, I'm going to go ahead and run a USB to where our current cigarette lighter is. This is completely optional, you don't have to do this. I'm just gonna do it now that the radio's off, just makes it a lot simpler later down the road. So the first thing to install that USB port is gonna be removing this AC control section. All you have to do is just pop this out as so. It's gonna sound painful. It hurt me just doing that. And then you have these plugs in the back. All you do is press on that tab and it pulls right out. And then just unplug everything. These are just a couple of quick little clips. There's nothing here too serious that I can't plug in afterwards. That's how you take out this complete section. So there's two tabs on each side of that cigarette lighter that are holding it on. I'm not going to be reusing it, this cigarette lighter in particular, as I have the other USB. So I'm just going to snip them off. It just seems like the easiest option to be able to get this cigarette lighter out. And with just a little bit of persuasion, it should pop right out once those are kind of trimmed off a little bit. And they will still hold eventually. I only cut one off, but it will still hold eventually if you do need to reuse that. And as you see, we have our hole, and these are the kind of the marks where it's holding on. But that shouldn't be a problem, as we'll have the face over here covering, which isn't scarred, and then we'll have a nut holding it on in the back. So to start that off, this is actually going to be probably the simplest part. I'm just going to grab my USB port, I'm going to stick it in and feed the wires through, and I'll show you how I connect it back here. So I went ahead and grabbed my dual USB cables, as you can see, and so this has the two USB ports, and you'll see why in a second. I got it that way. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to fish the cap through, just because for the Jeeps they have this little notch where the original cigarette lighter went in, and this will kind of help cover a little bit of that up. Like that, and as you see now, this sits flush here against the Jeep panel, and then if I ever want to use the cap, I just hook the cap like that, and then I'll go ahead and tighten it on the back end now as well. Perfect. Now once we have it straight, we can go ahead and tighten it to as tight as you like. I don't want it super tight, I don't want it, cracking the plastic or anything like that, but I do want it tight enough to where if I'm plugging things in and out, it won't be moving. So I'm going to set this aside for the moment, just because we're not going to be using that for now. Now that the physical aspect is done, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be splicing the original connector for the USB for this new cigarette lighter. It'll all make sense in a second. I know you're saying, why are you installing a cigarette lighter when you already had one? I'll explain that in a second. But what we're going to do is we're going to separate these two wires. We have a red and a black. And then on our original cigarette lighter, we have a purple with kind of a bluish line through it, and then a black with a whitish line through it. On my Jeep in particular, the purple with the bluish line is the power. So that's going to connect to our red wire on our cigarette lighter. And then the black with the white is our ground. So that's going to connect to our black wire on our cigarette lighter. And I'll go ahead and cut those, use the butt connectors, and we'll connect those two together. Perfect, so I've peeled those two wires back, and I'm going to strip them in a second. But first I'm going to grab our USB lighter and grab our single port USB. I'm going to just plug it in, just like if we were using any regular cigarette lighter. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of electrical tape just to make sure that it stays in place and doesn't come out. It doesn't have to be a lot. We're not, keeping any water out, any moisture, anything like that. It won't see any. This is just so that we make sure that it stays in place. So now that I have our single dual USB port, I'm going to take one of the wires from our USB port, and I'm going to pick the bottom one just because that's where I would want to put it. And I'm going to run this to my radio. So I have a dual radio, and that radio has the option for Apple CarPlay. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that one in here. The second wire that comes from my dual USB, I'm going to plug that into our cigarette lighter, and that's going to act as a regular cigarette lighter, a USB port that I could use to charge or anything like that as well. Although I can still use the other one, it's just going to connect to the radio automatically. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and put the radio back and put our panel back in. That way I can run the reverse camera lights and run those back. Now our USB is installed, that's all we need to do for the USB, so that's good to go. So I'm going to place these up here, all this wiring, and I'll zip tie everything towards the end. Again, I'm just putting this now just so that it's a little bit more clean, a little bit easier to run the wires back, and then before I button everything up and do the final touches, I'll make sure everything works. So let's go ahead and plug all of our plugs back in. Now make sure that your tabs align. As so. Just give it a good press in. And there you are. That's my USB. For now, as I said, I'm just going to put all these cables back here, just in a bunch. In the meantime, until we get the radio figured out, so we make sure that the reverse camera is indeed working. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the tail light now, and that's going to give me access to the reverse light, which I'll use to tie into that reverse camera, and that'll activate the camera on the screen when we put it in reverse. And now this is just a Phillips head screwdriver that you're going to need, and it's just these two Phillips head bolts on the inside. You don't need to remove the ones on the outside. Those just hold the light together itself. Once those are out, I'll make a little gentle tug, and that'll remove it from its place. Perfect. Now I'm going to set this aside so that I don't lose the two little spacers in between my cover and light. With this removed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my test light, and I'm going to poke around on these cables and see exactly which one it is that activates when I put it in reverse. So I'm going to grab my test light. Be sure anytime you're using a test light, make sure you have a good ground to it, just so that when you're poking around, nothing pops off. And so I'm going to ground it actually to the metal tin inside the Jeep that's not painted. You want a non-painted surface, just like if you were grounding any wire. And once the reverse, I'm going to poke around, see which one it is that turns the test light on. So I went ahead and actually re-grounded it to the latch on the door, so the post that latches the door or the tailgate on. And that gave me a better ground. It wasn't grounding in there, so it wasn't pulling anything up. And so with a little bit of gentle tapping, on the 4 pins inside the plug. I went ahead and found out that it is the white with the gray, the white wire with the gray stripe in it, that is our reverse light. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice into that and connect our reverse camera into that. So I went ahead and fished the wire through. Now underneath here, you have to remove this plastic, and underneath that plastic is gonna be a grommet underneath the plastic and the carpet. So move that plastic out of the way, move the carpet out of the way, and I fished the wire right through that same grommet that's already in there, and I have pulled it out right here. So this is what's left of our wire. With this, I'm going to fish it through down here, just how I have the other wires set up for my third brake light. And I'll make another video on that if you guys want to. Just let me know in the comments. So I'll fish that down through and then run them through here to connect my reverse camera right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass this wire through a hole found inside our taillight housing, our tail light, that's going to pass all the way to the fender and then run it down that way. Perfect. So I went ahead and took off the spare tire, and I'll save myself the embarrassment of showing you that. So I went ahead and took that off, and I placed our bracket. Now I have a license plate bracket that goes through the middle of my spare, and what I did is I put the camera bracket right behind that one, just because I don't mind it coming out a little bit further license plate, because I can adjust that, but I can't adjust the camera one. So I put that one as far back as I could. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our wires that we ran from below, and I'm going to run them through the bumper with our other wires that I have for my third brake light and my license plate light. And I'll run those up through here same exact way and connect them here just like I did the other ones, and I'll show you guys that as well. All right, so I went ahead and connected our camera. That's just gonna give us the space to be able to run the cables back and tuck them away exactly where we need them. Alright everybody, so we're all set. That's how you install the backup camera and the USB port here in the Jeep. If you would have done anything differently, go ahead and comment that down below for me and I'll be looking out for those. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe and turn on your post notifications so you don't miss our next video where we'll be taking the Jeep off-roading at a local off-road park. Thank you guys for tuning in and we'll see you guys next time.